the virtual seminar. Welcome to the virtual seminar, which is organized by the Institutional Review Board of the College of Health Sciences at Addis Ababa University. This is part of a monthly series of seminars that we prepare on ethics in research. The objective is to provide some knowledge around healthcare ethics and health research ethics, and of course the broader ethics in research, and to provide a platform for people to discuss issues around this. Today I'll be moderating this session. My name is Dr. Azeb Asaminew. I'm part of the Department of Psychiatry at the College of Health Sciences. I work as an assistant professor there. And in addition, I'm part of the Institutional Review Board of the College of Health Sciences as a member. Our speaker today is Dr. Salamon Abbay. He's a pharmacologist with expertise in drug discovery and development. He's an associate professor and the head of the Department of Pharmacology and Clinical Pharmacy, the School of Pharmacy in Addis Ababa University. And he also serves as a secretary in the Institutional Review Board. Additionally, I believe he's passionate about training, research ethics, and clinical trial management, as well as research and academic leadership, which is why he has prepared the today's session on the conflict of interest in clinical research. We'll have a brief presentation from Dr. Salamon, about 40 minutes, and then we'll have an additional 40 to 50 minutes to discuss the issues raised. During this session, I hope that everyone can mute your microphones so that we can hear clearly from Dr. Salamon. And at the end of the presentation, you'll have a chance to ask your questions and discuss by unmuting and raising your hands. Until the end of the brief presentation, you can also put your comments and questions in the chat box. So without further ado, I will leave it to Dr. Salamon to start the brief presentation.
Okay, okay, thank you, Dr. Azeb. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you. Thank you very much for the generous introduction of me. It's a pleasure today to share with you about one of the very important issue in clinical research, that is a conflict of interest. Addressing this conflict of interest improves the quality of the research outcome and maintains the welfare of the participants and keeps data integrity. So from this context, paying attention for conflict of interest in clinical research is important. And today I will be sharing with you about the core areas where researchers encounter conflict of interest during their research activities. And we will also discuss about how to address this conflict of interest, which mechanisms, which approaches are available by investigators to minimize the conflict of interest will be our point of discussion. There are people who are in the waiting room. I have to admit them as well. So, by the way, I have no disclaimer of having a financial relationship to disclose. Just as a disclaimer, also, I have to declare that the pictures that are going to be presented in this webinar are of not mine. They are just fetched from open access sources that everybody can utilize for academic purpose only, not for commercial. wherever the sources are first primary reports or findings, I try to cite them to acknowledge their contribution to the area. Maybe some of you who are not going to speak, or just to give me a highlight of indication of to stop, you can mute your microphone. There will be a discussion session that you can unmute and speak and reflect on your experience about conflict of interest. Okay. So as an entry point of our discussion, I want to share with you some of the incidents that has happened in the past, just as a learning experience. We can have introductory lectures, introductory cases or history. One of the cases is about a famous scientist in the area of cancer drug development. He's also a good clinician, Jose, originally from Spain. He has a very high contribution to the science, but after some years of his contribution to the science, the investigative journalists watch out how he is conducting research and also avoid the issue of conflict of interest. And finally, they came up with the point that he fails to disclose corporate financial ties he had during his major clinical research in cancer chemotherapy. Even they interviewed him why he failed to disclose when he published in a famous journal like New England Journal of Medicine, The Lancet, and other dozens of journals. He undermined that fact. But they were serious because this researcher has not been involved only as a researcher in major findings of chemotherapy, but also act as the safety monitoring board or as an advisor to the different types of clinical trials. So really it was a tough time for him in the last stage of his career because lots of activists or ethics advocates were serious about how he failed to disclose the financial ties he had with big companies, big pharma industries, earning millions of dollars. So as a key point, what we can learn from this scenario is we cannot undermine the issue of conflict of interest. If at all we address the issue of conflict of interest by disclosing. With this introductory case, what I want to share with you is how science is advancing in the last 50 years. In the past, if you read more about discoveries, they were restricted within academia, and a lot of biomedical research outcomes were kept without any translation, without any market value. But in the 1980s, when a number of countries realized that this finding should be marketed, should be serving the community, the pharma industries took the initiative and they translate every discovery from the academia, from the universities into product. And this has been obtained as a result of partnership. So research partnership may involve the pharma industries that produce medications and also devices. And we can see how the number of products are increasing year by year because of the involvement of industries. But even the last 5 years, what we can see is not only we are not maximizing Walelni, would you mute your microphone, and others can also take a lesson? Don't wait for us to speak or to requesting for muting your microphone. So the partnership between academia, industry, the public research institution brings a big change. But even with that partnership, we were not satisfied. We can see how a number of public-private partnership initiatives, which are not part of academia, which are not part of industry, which are not part of the Ministry of Health or public institution, but they are separate non-governmental institutions or organizations that can lead or that can catalyze the partnership between the different stakeholders. But all these partners, when they come together, the extent of and also the issue of conflict of interest is increasing. So it's with this regard that currently we give due attention to conflict of interest as a challenge in having credible data and having a quality data. But also we have to give attention also about which strategies can be applicable to the different countries in addressing conflict of interest. So by definition, a conflict of interest is a set of conditions in which professional judgment occurring a primary interest, like the welfare of the patient or the validity of the research, tend to be or appear to be. Underline this one, because the level of conflict of interest is just sometimes maybe a kind of perception, not only a kind of measurable things like a tangible items. So whenever we feel that there is undue influence of the secondary interest over the primary interest, we can say that there is a conflict of interest. Sometimes the individual that has got exposure to this conflict of interest may feel it, or sometimes it's not the individual who himself or herself that can feel the extent of the conflict of interest, but the other stakeholders like the RB, the regulatory authorities, may be the one that can understand the extent of this conflict of interest. But in general, for us to say that there is a conflict of interest, there should be a primary interest and a secondary interest. And at the point of, at the junction or when there is a conflict of interest, we feel that the secondary interest is having influence on our decision related to the primary interest. So in summary, whenever we say that there is a conflict of interest, there are three elements. One is the primary interest, the other is the secondary interest. The primary interest and the secondary interest, they are pulling each other. They coexist, by the way. There is no any initiative or any research activity that has got only primary interest. There is always a secondary interest associated with it. And these two interests, when they have a set of circumstances or a relationship that can increase the risk that the primary interest is to be neglected or to be undermined, there is a conflict of interest. So for a conflict of interest, the three elements coexist: the primary interest, the secondary interest, and the conflict itself. As part of clinical research, we can mention the primary interest to be the end, the goal of that initiative, the research itself. But usually, especially from the universities, consider research as one of the primary interests. Additional primary interests may be there, teaching may be there, giving service, for instance, the College of Health Science or many other College of Health Sciences in our country, they also provide care to the patient. So that's also primary interest. So all these primary interests, if they are affected by, overwhelming by the secondary interests like financial gain, personal financial gain by professionals doing research, or if the same researchers have secondary interest of professional advancement only, or if these researchers are doing research not for the research finding, but for recognition, we can say that there is a conflict of interest. Sometimes their decision may be also compromised by having a relationship with family, friends, or any other individual. All these things are having impact on their decision. Okay. Maybe Lalam, can you admit those people who are joining us late every time, and then it's beeping on my screen anyway. If you can.
Yeah, I'm admitting that.
Okay, good. Okay, so in real life, we may have different conflicts, not only conflict of interest, but also conflict of obligations, conflict of commitment, many others. So relevant to our discussion in clinical research, the very important issue is a conflict of interest. But as well, we cannot undermine the impact of conflict of obligation and conflict of commitment in generating credible data and protecting the welfare of the patients. So by conflict of obligation, we may have two primary interests that can all coexist together in our decision. For instance, when we recruit patients for in undertaking some clinical research, individuals are consented for maintaining the confidentiality of their data. So we provide them consent with the intention that we will maintain their data without sharing to third party. That is the good practice in research. But in the process of their follow-up, if these participants encounter contagious disease, which is a threat to an individual living with them or to the public at this moment, are we going to disclose this scenario to the responsible body or not? We may have a dilemma in decision of sharing this event to the responsible individual. So at this moment, we are having conflict of obligation, which means the primary interest of maintaining confidentiality of the subject data and timely communication of high-risk conditions to the responsible individual. So in this case, we have to decide. We have to choose only one. Two of the primary interests cannot proceed together. So this is a kind of conflict, what we call conflict of obligation. In another circumstance, as a researcher, we may have engagement in different tasks within the research institution, within the university, or outside. So we may be committed to different to the same type of task, but in different institutions. Again, this is a good example of conflicts of commitment. Sometimes the conflicts of commitment can be part of conflict of interest. If the primary interest is just the commitment within our institution, then the secondary interest is a commitment outside the institution. At this moment, if the secondary commitment, the secondary interest is going to affect our primary interest of serving the institution, at that moment, this conflict of commitment can be a conflict of interest as well. So what are the types of conflict of interests? This is our main discussion point. Conflict of interest can exist at individual level, at the investigator, at the clinical investigator level, or at the ethics committee level, or at the institution level, at the college level, at the university level. Let's see the examples of conflict of interest at investigator level. Investigators, when they are going to work with pharma industries, or in the case of pharmaceutical industry sponsored research, they may get the full grant to cover the cost, and they may be also paid for the time they spend. But then, if the payment, the extent of the payment is not proportional to the time they spend, that may be the source of financial conflicts of interest. But the conflicts of interest within the investigator's experience is not limited to finance, but also to non-financial types. For instance, some investigators may have non-financial conflicts of interest, like career development. Imagine the primary interest of conducting research is to solve the problems of the society, but career development is a secondary interest. There's no mistake by having secondary interest, but the secondary interest should not have impact on the primary interest. It's like the secondary interest should be a kind of byproduct. It should not be the main product that we are craving for. So if researchers are working day and night just only for career development, but just only for having publishable results, only to just provide service to the patient, to the student, or to be famous, to be influential individual. This all are secondary interests. And in general, every individual should have secondary interests. That is a normal thought. But if this secondary interests have unduly influence on the primary interest, there is a conflict of interest. In fact, you yourself may feel that how practical it is to assess the non-financial conflict of interest. It's very difficult. The financial conflict of interests are measurable. Just it's a matter of having the bank account of the individual, checking how much money is credited overnight. That's it. But the non-financial conflicts of interests, most of the time, they are not measurable. It is only the investigator himself or herself that declare or that reflect how these secondary interests are influencing their decision on initiatives that are required in primary interests. Then the conflict of interests are not limited to the investigators. Any stakeholder involved in clinical research may have conflict of interest, unless otherwise it is addressed well. For instance, ethics committee or research ethics committee or the IRB itself as an institution, it may have conflict of interest when there are some scenarios, like if the members of the ethics committee has a relationship with investigators. If one of the research ethics committee member has got PIs or principal investigators that submit their proposal, if there is a relationship. If the member of the ethics committee themselves submit their proposal as an investigator, there can be conflict of interest. Then if the members of the research ethics committee have relationship with pharmaceutical industry as a consultant or as any important expert to make a contribution in product development, at that time the research ethics committee function may be affected. Their decision may be compromised because there is conflict of interest. Of course, without going through other slides, it's good if I address how these ethics committees address the conflict of interest in each scenario. For instance, if investigators submit their proposal for review, by the time the research ethics committee member gets any proposal from an investigator that has a relationship, it can be familiar relationship or collegial or any other thing, but that has effect on decision. At that moment, the member of the research ethics committee should declare and should be free from any reflection about this proposal. We usually do that. If I have got a friend who submitted the proposal, if I feel that my decision is going to be compromised by being a friend of him or her, I have to declare that and be free from the task of reviewing that type of proposal. If I submit my proposal as an investigator, as a member of the college, as a faculty of the College of Physics Science, serving also the IRB, I may have the right to submit my proposal to the same IRB. But at that moment, I should not be involved in any process of reviewing and also assigning reviewers of my own proposal. So that is one of the approaches that is important to address the conflict of interest related to proposal review from the IRB members themselves. How about if the members of the REC have a kind of agreement or arrangement or secondment to the pharmaceutical industry? Again, they should declare. In fact, in this moment, there is also financial issue. So if the institution has a financial limit, that a member of the research ethics committee may not need to review any proposal or any make any reflection about requests that comes from the pharmaceutical industry of the ones that has a relationship with this member. But it doesn't stop by that. Some countries have financial limit. If you are paid this much, more than this much amount, you cannot be part of the task that is to see the issue related to any report from the pharmaceutical industry. Or you should declaring the relationship may not be the last stage of addressing the conflict of interest. So all these issues are related to the ethics committee function. Then at institutional level, again, there can be conflicts of interest. People at the level of investigation, as an investigator, as a member of the research ethics committee, may have different sources of conflict of interest. Again, at the institution level, for instance, our college hosts different types of clinical research led by our faculty members. Then the college wishes to host many research, may have interest to attract grants. Imagine the primary interest of the institution is not to attract the grant. It's rather to generate evidence, to have a problem solving findings to the community, to the patient at individual level. So that's the primary interest of the institution. But as a secondary interest, institutions can have interest of attracting more grant, getting more fund, and using that more fund to improve the service they are delivering, or buying also some share from pharmaceutical industry or from other organizations in the country. So at this moment, there is a conflict of interest. Imagine if the managers forget about the research evidence generation as a primary task and give attention only to the amount of fund that is obtained this year, without just focusing on the generation of evidence. At this moment, there is conflict of interest. It's a kind of like the institution forgets about the primary interest. Another scenario is if the institution hosts studies from pharmaceutical industry that has got also reality to the same institution, to the same college, there is a conflict of interest. It's just like the financial gain from pharmaceutical industry, it doesn't stop only at the level of investigator, but also at the level of the university or research institution. Okay. Then, if we are talking about clinical research, it has different stages. There's a design stage, there's a conduct stage, that's the execution or the implementation stage, there's analysis stage, also the reporting stage. At each stage, there can be some mechanisms of influence, some outcomes of conflict of interest that is visible for anybody. For instance, individuals or institutions which have conflict of interest may plan to conduct a research which has inferior comparator. For instance, if we want to compare the new drug with the old one shouldn't be the one that is obsolete. It should be the one that is part of the standard care. So if our design is going to be corrupted or wrong because of the conflict of interest, investigators may choose the inferior comparator, may also choose the research agenda only of valuing the marketing, not about the generation of evidence in safety and efficacy of the product. So at design level, there can be mechanism of influence. At the conduct level, at the implementation level, there can be also mechanism of influence. We want to avoid conflict of interest, not to have impact on randomization process. We have to make also effort in avoiding or minimizing the conflict of interest, not to have effect on data entry. If there is conflict of interest, it may be affecting the randomization process of patients to different arms of treatment, or the data entry, data entry process may be also compromised. So the impact doesn't stop at the level of the execution or the implementation, but also at the level of analysis. Once the study completes data collection, still we are waiting for analysis. So in the analysis part, if individuals with a conflict of interest are engaged, they may have a kind of activity to usually when we design a study, we have a statistical plan, especially in big research activities, in big clinical trial. We have a statistical analysis plan, we have data management plan. But if we have a conflict of interest and that affects our analysis activity, we may be not performing good in having a planned analysis. The research team may be also engaged in fabrication of data, or they may be blocking data access to the right stakeholder, to the investigator, for instance. In sponsored research, for instance, the pharma industries may be blocking data access to the sites from different areas. For example, there may be 5 or 6 sites in hosting the same study. So the sponsors may only allow investigators to access their own site data. But in good research practice, data may not need to be blocked at all, or if the blocking is rational, it should be also based on data sharing policy that is developed during the design of the research. Again, the conflict of interest outcomes may be also continuing during the reporting phase. When research outcomes are reported, people with a conflict of interest may be overly report positive outcomes. They may not interpret the negative outcomes well. Rather, they may give due attention only for positive outcomes, and over-interpretation can be also a sign of the outcomes of conflict of interest. Another scenario is the premature release of interim data. Usually, the interim data is important internally among the investigator and the sponsor. But sometimes people with a conflict of interest may be releasing the interim data before the right time as the plan, especially if the outcome is positive, if the outcome of the interim data reflects how important the medication is, they may do that. So that's also a sign of the outcomes of conflict of interest. So we should do something at each steps of the clinical trial. During the design, what we have to do, during the conduct of the research, during the analysis, during the reporting, to minimize the negative effect of the conflict of interest. Okay, so what are the coping mechanisms? How we can address the conflict of interest? Okay, my PC is I don't know, it's inactive. I don't know. Is it visible from your side? Hello?
The slides are visible.
Okay, good. At least for you. Okay. So what are the coping mechanisms? Okay. So if we mention all the challenges associated with the conflict of interest, how we can address, what are the mechanisms that should be in place to minimize the negative impact of a conflict of interest. At country level, at institution level, we can have a means. One of the very important approaches having a framework, especially at national level, at regulatory office level. There should be a framework to address the conflict of interest. But this framework should be also interpreted in the form of guideline, in the form of institutional policy, so that each institution can control or can help researchers or stakeholders in mitigating the impact of conflict of interest. So developing measures or means to enforce the conflict of interest policy is also important. Third is having a framework or having the means to enforce is just one approach to minimize the problems of conflict of interest. But what is important as part of preventive approaches to promote ethical conduct? We need to have a means in promoting ethical conduct of research, voluntary compliance of our investigators, research ethics committee members, any stakeholder that has got conflict of interest in clinical research on voluntary basis to comply with the good research practice or conduct. Another means is each institution can have also a means to declare any financial or non-financial interests as well. Of course, non-financial interests are not easy for registering or for documentation, but at least what is feasible by many countries is to declare financial interests. Then at individual or institutional level, we can also discuss about how and what type of conflict of interests are the potential challenge, periodically, what type of conflict of interests are available in the institution, and also at individual level can be also identified as one initiative to address the problems of conflict of interest. And the last is having a management scheme for conflict of interest. Conflict of interest can be minimized by having a preventive approach of the ones that I mentioned, but also if it happens, what we should do. Sometimes this can happen, and then what is the event management? What type of scheme institutions should have to manage the conflict of interest should be also be available. So if institutions and countries have this means, at least they are in a position to manage the problems of conflict of interest. As part of this initiative, many countries develop conflict of interest act or regulation. Ethiopia, as one of the countries, also some months back drafted regulation on conflict of interest prevention. The Federal Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission presented its draft regulation to the Ministry of Council, that is the right body, I think, to review and approve regulations. Of course, there can be also involvement of the parliament. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, we are like moving forward in having the conflict of interest regulation or act. And we will see what its level will be in the end. Is it going to be at the level of act, just like a law that can be impacting our day-to-day practice in research or not? We'll see. But that's the good news, at least having regulation in prevention of conflict of interest. And following this, I hope our institution will have also its own institutional policy, or at the college level or at the university level, because this regulation at the federal level can be used as an input to develop institutional guideline in addressing conflict of interest. Then, as the strategy for managing the conflict of interest, by managing, including the prevention of or minimization of the impact of conflict of interest in clinical research, we can work during the design of the research, during the execution of the research, during the analysis and reporting. For instance, at institutional level, for instance, even though there is no a kind of conflict of interest policy in our institution, but in practice, what we can follow is during the design of the research, declaration procedures should be in place. We can have also a restriction about direct payment. For instance, if we are investigator and getting fund from somewhere and running a research, we are not directly paid from that research. So having that scheme is also one way to minimize the risk of conflict of interest, no direct payment. Again, during the design, we can draft data management plan, how the data is going to be managed during the implementation phase, during the analysis phase, how the statistical procedure is followed. So using the SAP or the statistical analysis plan, we can minimize the risk of the conflict of interest in having wrong data. Then during the design as well, countries or institutions have the right not to allow the participation of these researchers in this type of research, because there is a clear and evident risk of having conflict of interest. So decline of participation of an academic researcher is also one way to minimize the problems of conflict of interest. Another means is we may not be interested in refusing the participation of our famous researchers in a specific type of researcher, but we may be interested to know their negative effect on the design of the research. So at this moment, we may exclude some of the collaborators, some of the researchers during the design of the research. Once the research proposal is designed, they may not be having any conflict of interest. So that type of approach can be also in place to manage conflict of interest during the design of the clinical study. Again, at the implementation phase, we mentioned randomization as one area to be affected as a result of conflict of interest. So we can have an appropriate randomization procedure. It can be web-based system and giving or delegating the right personnel for controlling the randomization procedure, having an appropriate blinding procedure as well. Who is going to be blinded? Is it only the trial physician, the nurse, or the lab personnel? Which research team members should be blinded during the conduct of this research? We can identify those personnel who are at high level of conflict of interest in generating data. So educate blinding procedure can be an important thing. And the third is having independent committees. When we conduct a clinical research, especially in clinical trial, we are expected to have a data monitoring committee or data safety monitoring board. So this independent committee can have a better insight about how far we are going well. So by having the independent committee, we can minimize the challenge related to conflict of interest. I don't know why my PC is turning off. Huh? Does it happen from your side? Hello.
It's still visible.
Yeah,
It is visible. It is visible.
it's just turned it off, and now it appears with. Let me unshare and then share again. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering. Oh, sorry. Stop sharing. that I encountered a big bar of black screen that shades my access to stop sharing.
Yeah, we can also see that, I think.
Okay,
Um,
maybe Lalam, can you stop sharing and then I can share it again? I can't, my cursor is just over it and I'm wondering, or shall I join you again? Yes, let me join.
okay, until Dr. Salamon can come back with his slides. Seeing that there are some questions and comments in the chat box. If you have additional comments and questions, you can still put them in the chat. And I believe he's almost done with his presentation, so we can go into that discussion soon.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
big apologies. I don't know why I encountered that.
That's fine. I
maybe
think maybe
Lalam,
La'alam, can
you
you
add?
make him
Yeah,
post?
yeah.
Okay.
It's
In
a
the
funny
meantime,
part.
I think that's fine. There are actually a lot of questions coming, so we are going to have
Oh,
a very lively discussion at the
okay,
end.
okay. Let me then give time for the discussion. Okay, try to.
That's fine. That's fine. I think you're
Okay.
almost towards
Okay.
the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe if you can make it full screen.
Trying to do that slideshow. This one is hiding. I don't know why Zoom is misbehaving.
It's fine. I think this is still visible if you can zoom.
Yeah, but I didn't encounter this type of, whenever people are having this problem, I used to wonder how this problem is happening, but it's now coming to me. It's my turn today.
Now it's
Okay,
working, so it's
good.
good.
Thank you. So, big apologies for the technical problems. Again, back to our discussion. Let me give in mind. So I was talking about how.
Just let me remind people to mute their microphones so that we can hear Dr. Salamon clearly.
Okay, would you
Dr.
mute your
Erdo.
microphone? Okay, so at the level of implementation as well, we have the capacity to manage a conflict of interest. These are examples actually, not exhausting all the means or the strategies for the management, but of the most important one, like assigning patients to different treatment arms, blinding the procedure to the patient, also to the healthcare or the clinical investigator, and also having an independent steering committee or data monitoring committee or data safety monitoring board can help us in managing conflict of interest during the plan of the study. I mean, during the conduct. And once we have the data and everything, again, at this moment, to whom or to which stakeholder are we going to share data? Is also another area of conflict of interest. Are we going to share the data to academic researchers, to the site investigators, or the sponsors only at the central area, control everything, and play around with their data as they wish without having a concern of adhering to the statistical analysis plan? Who is going to analyze the data? Even though the sponsors and investigators are part of the very important stakeholder in clinical research, do we have an independent statistician as part of the analysis? Or are we going to analyze data by ourselves, collect data, analyze, and then report, avoiding some tasks or delegating some tasks to an independent body can manage conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest in clinical trial. Then the last is reporting. Are we going to communicate these findings to the appropriate stakeholder, to the public, to the scientific communities through through informal way of publishing the findings? Are we transparent or not? Being transparent is also reflected at the time of the design. When the study is designed, and also before initiation, if we publish that protocol or that proposal in a clinical trial registry that is approved by an independent body, that is also one important means of avoiding conflict of interest, because the conflict of interest of hiding data as a result of the unduly influence of secondary interests is preventable if we publish the protocol, if we publish every negative findings as well, not only positive finding. The other one is also when we report the data, do we allow academic researchers or PhD students, if they are part of this, as part of the authorship? We can also mention that initially as well, during the design, as well as during the reporting period, in presenting the long list of authors that are participating in the study. So all these strategies can help us in managing conflict of interest, and they cannot be written in detail in the regulation. The regulation can give us a guide, but we at an institution level can put all these means in place to to minimize problems related to conflict of interest. Then, who is going to say this one is a conflict of interest? This is not. That means every time, whenever we have this long list of interests, we have to feel where the conflict is. Which one is a primary interest? Which one is a secondary interest? So the first question in analysis of conflict of interest is having a question of, is there a conflict of interest first? Who is going to say that? Usually I promote individuals themselves to say so, not just to be asked by somebody else. Like I appreciate if I myself identify the where the conflict of interest is, because I am the individual that is engaged in that research as an investigator. I shouldn't wait for somebody or some stakeholders to ask me whether there is a conflict of interest or not. Second is, how significant? The answer may be yes, there is conflict of interest. That's not a problem. The problem is, how significant is the conflict of interest? What is its impact on the generation of data? What is its impact on the welfare of the participants? That should be also addressed. Then the third is, after identifying the significance, what type of options, what type of guideline is available in our institution to eliminate this, to mitigate this, to manage this conflict of interest. Also, all these three things are followed in analysis of conflict of interest. So those institutions which have a policy can proceed up to the third stage, but other institutions which have no this policy, they may practice with the first and the second. If there conflict of interest, yes and no, are significant, and then as a policy option, there may be declaration of the conflict of interest just to submit the declaration. But in institutions which have a well-developed policy, they can have a scenario for different types of options. Then in the end, as a key message of today's discussion, we should have these points. The secondary interests, they are not usually illegitimate by themselves. It's true that everybody has secondary interests, but whenever the secondary interests have impact on the primary interests outcome, there is conflict of interest, and we should have a means to minimize the influence of secondary interest on the primary one. And we can say that the primary interest must always prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salomon, for the very informative presentation. Many participants were saying that this is a very nice presentation and that they're getting new information from the presentation. So to aid us in the discussion, maybe you can stop sharing the screen and then we can go to the questions posted in the chat.
Yeah.
Before I go to the questions in the chat box, the first question will be mine.
The moderator takes the lead.
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually related to your presentation. In the first few slides, you had a slide that you put up, which you discussed any disclaimers. Is it related to conflict of interest in any way? Why do you have the need to tell us about the disclaimers? Okay,
thank you very much, Dr. Azeb. Yeah, it's part of the declaration to minimize the conflict of interest. it's in line with our today's discussion. Whenever we make a presentation, whether this topic of our today's discussion has got secondary interest or not. If this, for instance, presentation is funded by some initiatives, or if I have some financial relationship to the area of this today's discussion, I should declare. So by chance, I have no real or apparent relevant financial relationship to disclose in line with our today's discussion. Additionally, whenever we got also resources from somewhere, either we should acknowledge them or make sure also that resource is not licensed or be available for free use for academic reason. So it's perfectly in line with our today's discussion. And yeah, it's very unusual for academicians to have this slide page in most cases, because we use textbooks, but it's good practice to have. Thank you.
Yes, so you're already leading by example. One of the common questions that was posed in the chat box was actually, is it actually possible to avoid or minimize conflict of interest? So you're already telling us that one of the things we can do is at least try to recognize whether there is any conflict of interest at all, and then if it's significant, and if based on the significance, to find out a way to minimize it as much as possible. So one of the things we can do is at least acknowledge anything whenever we present or discuss. Great.
Usually if the impact is it's not, I mean, if the risk is minimal, declaration of that conflict of interest may be enough. And otherwise, depending on the significance, the measures taken to avoid the impact of this conflict of interest can be changed. And what's good is if institutions have policy specific to address this conflict of interest. I hope today's discussion can initiate a team to work on having a draft conflict of interest policy.
Great. Another question that's probably related to the working of the IRB or the ethics committees is a question from Haftamu, who asked, how can we handle a conflict of interest in which an IRB member has presented a protocol of his own to the IRB, where all the other members are his friends or her friends?
Yeah, that's a common event, and it's a good example, because the IRB members are also researchers. For instance, I myself, as a member of the IRB, I'm conducting research, and I should have a protocol that is approved by getting an ethical clearance from the IRB. So in this condition, what we are following is I have to submit my proposal using the formal channel as if I am an investigator, not as a member. I'm not even considering my membership as the kind of fortune or something to get ethical clearance. Then the institutional review board officers or administration staff manage that proposal, discussing with the chairperson or the co-chairperson, assign the proposal to the member of the research ethics committee. I cannot be present at the time of the discussion of the proposal, which is emanating from my side. So I will be excused in all the processes of the proposal review. Then I'll be getting the comment. So that all things is just following the standard operating procedure of the IRB. So practically, this is avoidable challenge if the institutional review board is strong. For instance, in the College of Science, the IRB has got a proper channel, a proper approach to manage such type of things. So it's not an issue. We don't discuss about this challenge because there is a working procedure to address such type of thing. But if the research ethics committee is weak, like if it doesn't have office, if the research ethics committee has no administration staff, the concern of my colleague is evident. It's possible to have a conflict of interest, but by having the proper functions of institutional review board, the member of the ethics committee can be applying their own proposal, and the conflict of interest can be managed or can be minimized. That is possible. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So in line with what you're discussing about having an office and having an administration, I want to acknowledge Lalam, who's also helping us in the chat box and admitting people and organizing this seminar, who is part of the administration of the College of Health Sciences, IRB. I also was seeing Dr. Erdau on the call. He had his hands up. I don't know if he wanted to say something. You can unmute.
Yeah, Dr. Erdau.
Hello, my connection is good. Are you hearing?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lemon. This is a really nice presentation, and we have several informations at hand now. Now I have one question. It's in relation to strategies that help us to mitigate conflict of interest is no direct payment for researchers. I'm a bit worried about how researchers can be prevented from direct payment, or what does it mean direct payment? And
Okay,
because there are some cases where majority of funds goes to researcher payment. So may you have some comment on this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Erdau, for flagging this issue, because yeah, it's the meaning of no direct payment means indirect payment is possible. But the context of the presentation is that whenever investigators have clinical trials from pharma industries or even from funders like NIH or EDCTP, payments or any payments related to the time they spend or the honorarium, the small amount of money, it should be from the institution, not from the funder directly. Directly from the funder, payments to the investigators may create a big challenge, and the financial interest will be growing too much. For instance, in the first slide, if you remember the case of Dr. Josie, it was because this famous scientist used to have direct payment from pharma industries on top of the fund to the research cost. He used to earn millions of USD as a member of the data safety monitoring board or as a PI for hosting in different form of service he delivered to the pharma industry that developed similar type of product. So that way increases the challenges of financial interest. But if the PIs are paid, like for instance, now currently in Addis Ababa University or other universities, if I win a grant from somewhere, whether it is from partners or from pharma industries, I cannot be paid directly from those institutions. I will be, if at all, if I feel that I spend significant number of hours, more than the university's expectation, the honorarium payment is just after having agreement with the university, not with the funder. So if the funders are directly crediting the bank account of the investigators, the financial interest will be high, and for sure the secondary interest will will be reversing the outcomes of primary interest. So that's what my understanding in when we say direct payment. And so we shouldn't advocate the direct payment, rather it should be through a formal channel, and that is an easy means to declare. So do you get Dr. Daud, the point?
Thank you. I am sorry.
Okay. Thank
you. I think you gave us good examples of financial conflict of interest and what kind of impact that they may have on the quality of the work and also on the well-being of participants. I think as a related question is about if you can give us examples around non-financial conflict of interest and their impact.
Mm-hmm. Especially in our institution, that what can be taken as an example, or in Ethiopia, it's just simply like if the researcher, the researcher's interest is like to be famous, like to be a professor in short period of time. That shouldn't be the primary interest. The primary interest is just conducting the research to solve the problems of the society. Like if I am running a clinical trial in developing a treatment for malaria, that is the primary interest, just contributing something to control malaria, something to treat malaria. So then in the process, I will have publication. In the process, I will be serving the university for a number of years. And in the process, I will be sharing students how to conduct research. So all these things are just important interests. But if I am going to teach students or be famous, want to be famous before the primary goal of the research, that is a good example of secondary interest. Of course, secondary interests are integral part of our profession. I have to teach. I have to, you know, why I'm bringing teaching as secondary interest today is because our topic is research, okay? But if I'm going to present conflict of interest in teaching to the ministry, teaching is the primary interest. And sometimes also teaching, doing research, patient care, all of the three can be the primary interests. So the secondary interests can be the outcomes, like publishing, and then through publication, through giving service for 4 years after associate professorship, if someone is going to be a professor. But dreaming about being a professor is a secondary interest. Just day and night, if that guy is waking in the morning and going to the research institute center, to the lab, just to be a professor, that is a secondary interest. Going to the lab it should be the primary interest, to find out something. So non-financial interests are long lists. There are many. It's just like our instinct behavior or thought that can give us a long list of conflict of long list of secondary interest. But for sure, anybody shouldn't be ashamed of having secondary interest. There should be secondary interest. The only thing is we shouldn't give priority to secondary interests. Secondary interests are just outcomes when we are by default carrying out primary interests.
Yeah. And I think what you're also saying is that the fact that someone has a conflict of interest or has declared a conflict of interest does not mean that the research cannot be done or should not be done.
Sure.
But they should find a way to minimize the effects of the conflict of interest in the research.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
that's a good point. There can be conflict of interest, but we should work on how to minimize that. Okay.
Yes, so Sintayo Tarrakany actually does not think that in Ethiopia it's possible to minimize the conflict of interest because many people do research and their primary interest or primary need is not to gain knowledge or to improve practice. And he's asking if you have any opinion.
I can understand the feeling. It's true that when researchers are just doing research for earning, that's what he is just saying. If we are doing research for earning, it's true that there is secondary interest, but in that process, overtly we shouldn't let the secondary interest to affect the primary interest. For instance, the primary interest may be to generate valid data. Okay, so in search for a job in research, like if I am going to be a postdoctoral fellow, I am employed, I am doing research as part of my career, but I shouldn't forget the primary interest of that project, that research is just to have a credible data without compromising patient safety. So it's still possible. The only thing is like the challenges are not the same. For instance, challenges by Ethiopian researchers to have a greater extent of conflict of interest is higher than researchers from somewhere. But even there in the West, conflict of interest is also on their table, because if the pharma industries are wandering around them with a bucket of not flour money, still conflict of interest is there. So the conflict of interest is not because of lack of money or something. Even with, you know, it's true, like corruption is not done by the poor people, it's by the rich people. So still, I can expect so the challenges of conflict of interest in developed countries as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's why you are mentioning the requirement of policies and procedures that can help us making this practice better compared to the other countries that we probably take the policies from. And you mentioned corruption, and one of the questions by Gamet Chiswari was, why did you mention the federal anti-corruption? Why was it raised regarding research conflict of interest? How is it related?
Yeah, actually, you know, it was my my interest to find out something from Ethiopia, because, you know, if you check the FDA, many other regulatory office of regulatory authorities in different countries, they have a statement, an article about how to manage conflict of interest and how they are serious about. For instance, in the US, if you are paid for more than 10,000 USD, clearly the research institution will not allow you to be engaged in that research. So there is a policy at institution level, at national level. But in our case, in Ethiopian context, there is no regulation of conflict of interest specific to research. Even for public employees, there is no policy at institution level, at a national level, a regulation as well. So I'm just sharing you that slide to poke you to let you know at what stage we are. It's not research specific, but that draft document points out some issues, like, for instance, as an investigator, you cannot buy a lab reagent from your company. So it's related, you know, sometimes there is no any boundary in ethics. It can be stretched to social science. You can find it, its impact in clinical science everywhere. So to me, I'm just sharing you that slide, not to bring our discussion about corruption and the like, but to show you that conflict of interest act, general conflict of interest, not only research and education, or just whenever we are working in public institution like universities or research institution or in city administration, wherever there is a conflict of interest act in some country, but not ours. So we are on the start. So it's just to update you where we are, not to teach you about that specific draft. Okay.
Great. We are almost at the final point of the discussion. Just final two questions, and then we end the session. So one question was raised regarding, I believe, the question was from Sisai Fissa, who asked, how is blinding contributors even possible? The researchers, how can they be blind to the research process if there is any conflict of interest?
Yeah, actually, blinding procedure itself can be also a specific lecture or kind of topic of a webinar. But as part of the strategy, by blinding means like the researchers can be the trial physician or the lab technologist or the pharmacist, the nurse that are engaged in data collection or examination, making them blind for the different arms will not allow them to be biased in generating some fake data or in allocating participants to like a test drug or to the standard care. So it's just like to make them free from any bias in collecting data. So imagine if let me take just one example. If a trial physician has got financial interest from that specific company where their drug is studied, then knowing which patient taking their drug will be affecting his judgment. But by blinding, will not let that individual to guess or to feel something different. So blinding has got a contribution in collecting real data. Whenever we have multiple comparators, for instance, if we are having 2 or more medications in the trial, so assigning individuals randomly by randomization procedure, then after assignment, not knowing which patient is taking which drug will be making us free from any bias. So it's from that context we consider that strategy as important.
Yeah. So I think the issues that you mentioned around conflict of interest, I believe they should be included in the proposals. There should be a clear way where people provide a way that they can minimize the conflict of interest that they have identified. And that should be detailed and documented well, so that anyone who may have questions regarding the research can easily view it and assess whether there is conflict of interest or whether that's appropriately managed. I think that's the big lesson here. And also to try to have policies as much as possible so that they can guide us in the conduct of research. There are still questions coming in, I'm seeing that, but because we're out of time, we're not going to go through them. But thank you everyone for your active participation. I'll call some people who have sent us their questions in the chat. Aschala Utamuru, Mesfin Gezahen, Gamachis Wari, Amir, Ayelas, Tarek Ainsi Saifisaha, Haftamu, Samaria, and also Dr. Erdau for participating. Thank you so much. We've also seen a lot of thank yous for your presentation. Many people are saying that it was informative. Thank you for the words of encouragement. I see that people are asking about the certificates, and I believe Lalam has put the email address so that you can email and request any information about the certificate, and also where you can get resources around conflict of interest. So if you have any final comments and any points you want to emphasize, Dr. Salamun, I'll give you that chance, and then we'll end the session.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Azeb, and all the audience. Yeah, your questions, comments are crucial, and I hope it will have impact on our activities in having the policies or the kind of guideline to help institutions in handling conflict of interest. That's my take-home message. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the more than 80 people who joined. La Alam, do you have any final comments?
I would like to thank everyone. We appreciate your participation. For any increase related to certificate or any other thing, please email us through our organization email. I just put it on the chat box. Thank you. I would also want to thank Dr. Azeb for moderating this session. Also, we would like to thank Dr. Salamun for hosting this month's seminar. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good weekend.
Thank you. Good weekend. Have a nice day as well. Bye-bye.